exciting. We have a great mix of people on here today. Some people I've not met before, some people who have been here for weeks and weeks. So I am so thrilled. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the 18th episode and season finale of this little show I put together, the Digital Campfire Download. This is a series where I talk to the creatives and the entrepreneurs who are building and stoking the world's most interesting digital communities right now. So I'm Sarah Wilson, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a digital content strategist based in LA. I created the term digital campfire to describe a type of online destination that's more intimate, more private, more interactive, or at least more so than the bigger public-facing social platforms. I launched this series to meet the creative and entrepreneurial forces behind hyper-engaged campfires with a goal to get inside them and really understand the strategies that make them burn bright, especially in a time of so much uncertainty. I couldn't be more thrilled to introduce my guests today, but first, just a quick bit of FYI, we are live, so I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. The conversation is going to go about 45 to 50 minutes, and you're going to have a chance to ask questions at the end. Feel free to ask questions, though, throughout the interview via the chat feature, which we've been using already in Zoom. And when I open it up to questions at the end, I'll try to get to all of them. I can also bring you into the conversation at that point via video if you would like, but no pressure. Also note that this is going to be recorded and shared out afterwards. And lastly, I'm doing this from home, so you never know what's going to happen. We could get disconnected, hopefully not. It's never happened, but if it does, just dial right back in. And lastly, instead of logging off after the show ends, stick around for a 10-15 minute free-form conversation I'll be moderating that jumps off this week's topic. It'll be a chance for you to meet, share ideas, and really learn from one another. Okay, so now on to the reason you're here, my guest today. So one of the biggest reasons digital campfires are popping right now is that they provide an escape from the intensity of public-facing social, a kind of pressure release valve from the built-in sense of needing to perform, to be liked, to be validated, that is inherent in other platforms. Pinterest may have launched 11 years ago as a place to save and store and curate cool things, places, and experiences, but in the decade plus since then, it's come to occupy this role I described. And there's a sense of exhale, like, when you come to Pinterest, at least in my experience. It's a safe, positive, judgment-free escape. So I'm excited to welcome my two guests today to talk about how those qualities specifically play a role in the evolution and growth of the platform to what it is today, and how creators are carving out a niche for themselves and growing communities within that environment of safety and positivity. So that in mind, please welcome my two guests today, Colleen Stouffer, Pinterest Head of Global Creator Marketing, and Courtney Quinn, the founder of Color Me Courtney, who's at the helm of a growing creative empire on Pinterest. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, I'm so thrilled you're both here. This is like two sides of the Pinterest coin, the creator and then the platform. We're going to talk about both. So I first want to just sort of dive into Pinterest as a platform and kick things off by kind of having you, Colleen, walk through the state of play on Pinterest today. So Pinterest has had a very good year. You guys crossed 400 million monthly active users this summer. To a large extent, Gen Z is driving Pinterest growth. The platform reported that, I think it was in Q2, the number of pinners under age 25 grew twice as fast as pinners 25 and over. So Colleen, what is it about Pinterest do you think is resonating right now with younger audiences in particular? Like, why are they coming to the platform?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for having me. I'm so excited we're doing this.
Oh
I'm also a huge fan of Courtney's and yours, Sarah. So it's like a dream trio right now. So yeah, as you said, we've been around for 11 years and we've had a pretty ambitious mission. So our mission is to bring everyone the inspiration to create a life they love. And we've really grown that mission with pinners, who are the people that come to our platform. And up to this point, they've really found out what inspires them. And now we're making a really conscious effort to not only bring pinners what inspires them, but who inspires them. So Courtney is the perfect shining example of this, of getting in front of these hungry pinners that are looking for ideas, but also looking for people with those ideas, people they trust, people that are positive, and those actions to really bring our mission further. And as you said, so Gen Z, yes, it's a huge growing audience on our platform. We saw, I think it was about 50% year over year growth on the Gen Z audience, which is really exciting to me. And we have so many amazing stories from Gen Zers that, said exactly what you said at the beginning, Sarah, of you feel like you just like take this breath of fresh air when you get to Pinterest. Yeah. And that's why they're coming to the platform. They want this safe space to express their interests. And it's really interesting. One of the biggest things is you saw the iOS redesign this year. We saw a huge uptick with Gen Zers searching for iOS wallpapers. Mm-hmm. It was like an astronomical number to really like redesign their home screen to make it Pinterest friendly. So, I mean, that's just such a small example, but it's really interesting to see how these Gen Zers can take our platform and really turn it into something more inspirational for their everyday life.
Well, we're going to get into that because I want to talk trends and kind of specifically how creators can leverage those trends. But I'd love to talk about kind of what changes specifically you've seen during the pandemic, like both in terms of numbers or shifting audience demographics. Have you seen those shifts at all?
We have, for sure. So as we've shared about, Gen Z is representing that huge growth in the audience.
That happened during this last like 6-8 months.
It sure did. Yeah. Which is incredible. And, also bringing more males to the platform as well, which has been really inspirational. And the way that everyone is using Pinterest is different, right? Or there are things that people have been saving on Pinterest for probably years. Yeah. And now because we've been in our homes more, they're actually ready to take action on them.
That's so
I think,
like it's come from sort of inspiration to action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to talk about dudes on the platform, but not quite yet. I was struck by an observation that Pinterest makes in one of its data releases, that people use Pinterest to plan for the future rather than just post about the past, which is kind of what you just said. There's an inherent optimism in that. And, it struck me that Courtney's whole brand is really about that. It's sort of like crazy, optimistic, positive. So it makes sense that Courtney would find a following. So Courtney, can you speak about how you came to build a following on Pinterest and your kind of evolution on the platform overall?
Yeah, so I'm like a really early adapter to the platform. And I actually, when I joined, I was in graduate school getting my MBA, and I had to have an invite to get in the platform. So it was like very early, probably maybe 10 years ago when I first started joining. And I haven't always used it as like a business tool for Color Me Courtney. For a long time, it was just a personal tool for Courtney itself. And then I've kind of like weaving in and out depending on what I was doing with my business needs at the time. But I think this year, and a lot of the cuties, which are my Instagram followers who are here, will know that the other day on Instagram, I said that I think Pinterest is the most important app for creators at the moment, or social media, or whatever you want to call it. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why. And I think it's because no matter what your size following, the same way that Colleen spoke to as users coming to Pinterest and being able to exhale as a safe space, it takes a lot of the pressure off too as a creator. Because on Pinterest, it's not so much about like how many likes and comments you got, how many like comparing yourself to other creators. It really gives you as an opportunity as a creator to just be yourself and put it out there and see what resonates. And if you put a pin up and no one repins it, it doesn't matter. And also if you put up a pin and no one repins it now, they might repin it in like 6 months from now, a year from now. And it just becomes this kind of like safer spot, not only for the users and the pinners, but also for the creators who are actually posting content there. So I think that's kind of why I've kind of returned to it a little bit more this year. For me, in the past, I'd always use Pinterest really for big moments. Like Halloween, I get usually about like 3 million eyes on my Pinterest during Halloween. I think this year we got closer to 5 million eyes, and because people were staying at home more. So I used to always kind of really focus on like major moments, Halloween, Christmas. I've been planning a wedding that I'll maybe get to have eventually, like 2024 sounds like maybe that's when that's gonna happen. Those major moments is when I was turning to Pinterest, and now it's become this like catalog of my life of the past 10 years, not only personally, but also creatively as Color Me Courtney. And so it becomes the only kind of forever destination. Whereas Instagram and even more so TikTok are so instant. Like I'm doing something now and I maybe hate what I posted 3 weeks from now. Pinterest kind of becomes my one forever place where all my content can live. And I think that's why it's so exciting for creators of all levels, because it has this unparalleled opportunity that you'll never get with another app.
It's quite a bold statement to say that it's the most important platform. I love it. And I just want
Bold.
to, you're bold. Yeah, you're nothing if not bold. I want to kind of dig into that a second because Pinterest is not your biggest platform follower wise, right? Like you have more on, let's say TikTok or Instagram. Why is it your most important? Like, what is that?
Yeah. So I think a little bit what I just touched on
Okay.
of that it is the only place probably that everything can live, right? Because I really believe in a strong creating for specific platforms, like kind of method, right? I wouldn't post what I post on TikTok, on Twitter, or on Instagram. I create specific for those platforms. So if you want to follow me and see the whole perspective in the past, before like I've kind of adopted this new Pinterest strategy, you would have to follow each of those individual things and kind of piece them together to get the whole picture. Now I'm using Pinterest as my one-stop shop, where even more than my website, Color Me Courtney, which also has exclusive content that I really invest heavily in. But if I have a photo of someone else's that I like and I want to repost, that's not something that I would publish on my blog, but it's something I might pin to a Pinterest board where it makes sense, right? So I can use it for everything from like things that I got inspiration from, to artists that I'm interested in, to color palettes that excite me, things that aren't really customer facing. They're a little bit more behind the scenes. Usually you can see that on my Pinterest and see like the inner workings of my brain. And because of that, we're in this time where most of my followers, I would say probably 30% of my followers want to be creators themselves. They want to have some kind of personal brand. And I think we're moving to a place where in 5 years, 10 years, maybe even sooner, everyone's going to have some kind of personal brand online in order to get jobs, in order to get like seen, depending on your industry. So everyone's creating personal brands and they all want to see the behind the scenes, the inner workings. They want to reveal behind the curtain. And Pinterest gives people the opportunity to see, oh, like maybe Courtney was inspired by this editorial thing that she pinned to her yellow Pinterest board. And that's why she decided to wear this tulle gown in the Flatiron District holding a pretzel. Like, and they can kind of see the whole journey. You would never be able to see that anywhere else. And even if I tried to catalog it all on an Instagram story, it'd be gone the next day.
Right.
So it's like the only kind of forever place for everything I'm creating. And I think that's why it's important.
Right. So it's much deeper level of storytelling that you're able to do just given the tools, and a deeper level of engagement as a result. So you talk a little bit about your audience. It's an interesting observation that you made about sort of, I mean, everyone needing, or I think you said 30% of my followers want to be creators themselves. They're learning from you. So how much do you know about your audience, and what tools does Pinterest provide to give you those insights, and how, or if not, how do you actually glean them?
Yeah, so the thing I learned most from my audience is honestly just by communicating. And usually that's something I'm doing on other apps, not necessarily on Pinterest. From Pinterest, I look from like an insights point of view, from what's being pinned, from how many times it's going out into the Pinniverse and like being seen and relevant. And I just kind of observe those. I also then like meet kind of major milestones that are happening. Cottagecore was a huge trend that was happening this summer. And like, I feel like Pinterest is one of the reasons it was so major. Like cottagecore has existed forever, but Gen Z just like figured it out this summer and became obsessed with it. And the huge
Why
like,
don't you explain that? Tell us what cottagecore is for those of us.
oh, I'm sorry.
No,
So cottagecore is this, like, it's an aesthetic. There's a lot of like stylish aesthetics like soft girl, and cottagecore is one that became really trendy this summer. It's very much a return to craft. I kind of hate to say this because she did not coin this, and there have been people who've been doing this forever, but I think a really good example is the Taylor Swift
I was just
album.
going to say, yeah.
I think that's what people think now when they think of cottagecore, but it's an aesthetic that existed forever, usually in the vintage community, and it's like kind of in like, the vintage community becomes really retro glam during the holidays, like big curls and like pinup. And in the summer, they kind of did this like return to like crafty, like cottage in the woods vibe, have a picnic, wear a floral dress. So naturally, because we're all shut indoors, this like dream of living in like a Disney princess cottage over the summer, we all kind of maybe resonated that more than ever before and leaned so far into this trend. And so it's something that's existed as an aesthetic on Pinterest forever, to where like I did a cottagecore Disney princess series this summer. So the first thing I did in getting inspiration and making sure I was doing the aesthetic correctly, because it's not necessarily my aesthetic, is I didn't go to Google and search cottagecore. I went to Pinterest and searched cottagecore, because searching it on Google, I don't know what I would have gotten. Right. But Pinterest as a safe space and the place where this trend has lived before it was trendy, coming from people who actually created the trend, I felt I was getting a much more authentic experience in doing my research.
It's an interesting way to think about it. I think it's something that both creators and, let's say, brands, not that you're both, can really leverage is those trends on Pinterest, and sort of almost like using it as a trend spotting vehicle. Colleen, are there specific ways to use Pinterest in that way? Whether it's like the trends, search feed or anything, like how would you suggest using it and leveraging it in that way? The way you described.
It's very, very timely, because if we had this conversation last week, I wouldn't have been able to share this, but literally this morning we launched our Pinterest Predicts. So if you go to pinterestpredicts.com, it's our predictions for the year ahead. So we do this every single year. And it's really to help creators and businesses get on top of the trends. Of course, like we've talked about, we're a future facing platform. And so we really want to help people get ahead of it versus look back at things. So everyone should definitely check those out. They're an amazing set of trends for 2021. I know we're anxious to get out of 2020, but it's a public facing platform. You don't have to have a account or login and all that stuff. But if you do have an account, we have amazing audience insights and analytics. So if you do want to see what content is resonating best, you can also go to your business account and figure that out as well.
And that's what's the URL? I'll just pop it in the chat. Pinterest.
Yeah. pinterestpredicts.com.
Okay, great.
I also would like to echo that the importance of having a business account if you plan on being a creator, because that's where you're going to get that additional insight and like a deeper dive look at your community to see what you should be creating into, what kind of is performing well for you. Like you really, really need a business account.
Okay, so business account, we're going to get into like I love a good tactical, like interactive. That's fabulous. Is Pinterest Predicts, just so I know, because I haven't had a chance to dig in on it, is that like a one-time release, or is that something people can check back throughout the year to see how trends are evolving in the way that like a Twitter daily trending might be?
Yeah, so this is our like big release, but then once a year, but we will probably be serving these ongoing throughout the year to help creators and businesses, put them really into practice. So if you subscribe to our emails, or we'll have webinars, all that good stuff. And then I also will say, we, think through each moment in time. We know like Pinterest people are planners. So taking these trends and moments, trends and matching them with the moments that people are, like Courtney mentioned Halloween, how can you bring these trends to life for those specific moments?
I do find it very interesting how certain trends have a long tail life, like cottagecore on Pinterest, and then it sort of suddenly the moment calls for it, whether it's Taylor Swift or otherwise, and sort of it explodes. Can you talk a little bit about, Courtney, virality on Pinterest? Like it's very different quality than it is on another platform, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm maybe not the best person to ask here, because I don't really believe in chasing trends. I believe in finding a trend and then making it work for you. That's always where I've had the most success. When I really started with my blog, I would look at what all the like successful bloggers were doing and I would almost mimic it, and it never took off. The only time it did is when I said, oh, like I learned to wear tulle from this girl, I'm going to now wear 3 tulle skirts because that's me and I'm extra and over the top. And I think Pinterest, above all other platforms, really like rewards individuality in that way, to where you can do things like look at the Pinterest report and see what trends are coming and be like, oh, if it's cottagecore, which like this thing is now sponsored by cottagecore, if it's cottagecore, how am I going to take that and apply it to me? So like the example for me was I have a second account that's all like nerdy focused, I would say. It's like Disney and like things that people don't think adults should like, but whatever. So I was like, how do I find cottagecore and what I love, Disney princesses, and put them together? And like that's then what was successful about it. So I think you can see what's trending on Pinterest and then make it your own, and that's the way that those things are going to become more viral moments on Pinterest. And the Pinterest audience isn't so instant. Like if you think of Halloween on Instagram, that's like the week of Halloween and then it's over. Pinners are like much more proactive and thinking ahead. Like if you're not pinning Halloween stuff in July, you're behind. So it's like a different kind of take on it, to where things can live a little bit longer. So you could be early to a trend and that pin can like get picked up and rewarded when the trend hits its spike. You could be late on the trend and people will still be searching it because it will still be integrated in like the Pinterest algorithm. So I think it isn't as important to have like these viral moments. It's more important to have consistent content, original content, and really be leaning into the trends that exist on Pinterest, but making them your own, because I think that's gonna be the difference between having a pin that gets repinned a million times and has all these eyes on it versus actually capturing someone to come follow you and be a part of your like own Pinterest.
It's such good advice, and I think it applies to other platforms as well, right? Make something your own. Like, what's your specific point of view that you are bringing? I think it's interesting too, Courtney. We were talking a couple of weeks ago, and you had said, I'm not the Pinterest aesthetic. Like, when you think of the Pinterest aesthetic, it's true. I mean, I always think of like minimalism, like chic, organic, modern, like everything is sort of just very cool and calm. And that's obviously not your vibe, and that's amazing. So do you think, or what role do you think, if any, that played in you kind of developing an audience on the platform?
Yeah, for sure. So the Pinterest like aesthetic, which I think it's coined that, and it's definitely evolved because now Pinterest is
Evolving.
everyone, right? But I still think of like early Pinterest as like the very like kind of white minimalistic with like maybe like twinkly lights kind of vibe. And now the cool thing is Pinterest is a place for everyone. And so if you can bring like the thing that makes you weird and different and makes you stand out in like a sea of whatever else is in the feed, that's the thing that people are going to gravitate to and remember. So in terms of like building an actual following, I think that's like a more successful path opposed to just leaning into what people already like and already see on the platform. Because if you can bring something different, then people will see you and want to stand out and like stay with you for whatever reason. So I think for me, like it just goes back to like being myself. Like I do this all day, every day. If I had to pretend to be something else, I would drive myself crazy. And I just found other people on Pinterest who were like me. I've kind of really early on accepted the idea that I'm not mainstream. I'm not for everyone. I'm very chaotic, and this overwhelms a lot of people when they look at it. But just because your aesthetic isn't what everyone else will want to replicate, probably I'd say 80% of my cuties don't want this in their home, but they like seeing it on my page, right? So maybe they'll go to this and they'll like, this background is actually, it's an IKEA bookcase, and then I DIY'd this with wrapping paper, an idea I actually saw on Pinterest maybe 8 years ago. And then when I finally had a bookshelf, I was like, oh, I know, I've seen that on Pinterest. And I think they did it with like very pretty, like gray wrapping paper. And I was like, I'm gonna make a rainbow. So I was able to find the trend that I saw on Pinterest, make it my own, and then now pin it. So then someone might see this and be like, oh, I'm gonna do that with navy wallpaper. Don't do it with navy, please do it with rainbow. But either way, you still found inspiration, even if you're not trying to replicate exactly what I was doing. So I think there's a way on Pinterest to be inspired, but not necessarily feel like you have to replicate what you're seeing. And there's different takeaways that you can take from me that you might not necessarily see on like a more simple aesthetic, but you might not also want to replicate exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I may have to like do my version of the wrapping paper, because like everything, I'm in the middle of like a home overhaul, and I feel you. But I don't know if I could I don't know if I'd be bold enough to do the full colorful rainbow. But like now I feel like I may be emboldened after this.
You'll do your own take.
Totally.
I wanted to say one point that Courtney, it's so perfect. I mean, it's so true. Like the Pinterest, we kind of cringe when we hear like Pinterest perfect or Pinterest aesthetic. And like, that's why we want people like Courtney on the platform to bring that different content on. I mean, it's the only way we're going to evolve as a platform. So I am so happy that you called it out, Courtney, and that you're building content on the platform that's more colorful and more interesting, because that's how we'll continue to make, it more diverse and inclusive too.
Right. Like a sea of sameness never helped anyone, right?
No,
like,
too boring.
Well, and aesthetics like have existed on every app. Like I feel like when I joined Instagram, it was like this very gray scale feed, like you could like backgrounds and things like that. So it's maybe unfair to call it like the Pinterest aesthetic, because every single app has had one, and you just kind of watch it go in waves and trends. And I've just kind of been like, oh, cool, they're doing that. I'm going to do literally the exact opposite. Right. And that's kind of always what's worked for me, even though I would say more recently, maybe it kind of halted this year, but we had this kind of colorful aesthetic that was happening in some places. And I was like, get out, this is mine, get out. But obviously excited to see more color. So pretty much everything comes around in a trend. The only thing that you can do is stay true to your own personal brand, find ways to nod to the trends that are going on so that you can still be relevant in those conversations. But at the end of the day, you have to keep it core to your brand, because the people who have hopped aesthetic to aesthetic, you're losing people along the way, or maybe gaining new people, but you're losing people along the way. And it's very hard for me as a follower to look at someone who's changed their aesthetic 47 times and really believe that they love whatever they're doing at this moment, because what happens when it changes the next day, you know?
Right. I also think the life philosophy of look at what everyone else is doing and then literally do the opposite is just like generally a great philosophy if you can stick to it. So I love that, not only for Pinterest. Audience versus community. I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think the word audience is often used interchangeably with community. And I personally think of them as quite different. To my mind, audience is sort of everyone, and then community is sort of your deeper people who are maybe obsessed with you, who really love you, who are your diehards. That's how I define it. I'm curious to know how you define the two. Do you make a distinction? And if so, like, what does it mean to build community on Pinterest versus other platforms?
Yeah, for sure. I do think there's a difference. I probably call everyone who's there, even just watching my community, and you're probably right, though, they probably are audience is probably a more accurate term. And then there's people I form like connections and bonds with. The cool thing that I actually haven't started using on Pinterest yet, but I'm literally just had a strategy call yesterday, and we like thought of this idea. And so we're going to implement it for 2021. So this is an exclusive, is that Pinterest has community boards, which I used to use back in the day, like when I first started. And when I was very lonely, like blogging by myself and only my grandma was a follower, I would connect with other creators on Pinterest, and we would create like joint boards, and it was like really fun. And so just recently I was like, do those still exist? Are people still using those? How could I use them to connect with my cuties, which is who my followers are? So for me, we do a color series every month called Color of the Month. And I usually give people the hashtag color me cuties, and say, if you want to like lean into that, if you want to create something for the color of the month, which maybe it's red. If you want to create something red, use the hashtag on Instagram, color me cuties. But it becomes messy and hard to like see, and you have to then go dig to find it, and then people like tag things that shouldn't be in there and all that. And I was like, what if we did this as a community Pinterest board, and it would just be a nice, easier, more aesthetic way to do this, because I'm always trying to connect with the people who are in my community. And I I'm kind of the most extra on 10 version, but if someone who's a 5 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10 on extraness scale can wear the same color red, that is going to inspire more people than me at like my utmost level. Because every time I put it on, people are like, I can't wear that. You're like the most extra person. I couldn't be on that level. So for me to tell people that they can, I have to show the spectrum. And so instead of me trying to scale myself back, let's find other people who are on different levels. And then it brings all of us excited about that one prompt. So I think because Pinterest has these community boards, they have a chance to really foster relationships that you can't have elsewhere. And I've, for the longest time, like been having one-on-one conversations in DMs with people. And I've said, I've wanted to have one where we could all be inspired and have community together. And it was just like last week that I had the light bulb that it's community boards. That's what this is. Like, why aren't I using this? I'm so dumb. I was using it back in the day.
Right. It's so interesting that you say that, because I was actually going to ask about, when we think of building community and like these digital campfires, and what makes them so awesome is not just the one-to-many communication from, creator to audience, creator to community. It's actually people connecting with each other and finding like value out of that. And so that's a really great example of how do we, how is Pinterest actually doing that? And are there others, maybe Colleen can speak to that, Courtney, like ways that Pinterest, even on the roadmap, is like thinking about bringing people together around their interests, obsessions?
Yes, I know. I think that is the cool thing about Pinterest. It is around like passions and interests and that kind of thing versus, other social platforms, a little bit different when building communities. So Courtney has already started to use our new Story Pins product. I think you've probably, if you guys haven't heard of it, we launched it in September, just like in a closed early access test. And it's, essentially like a multi-page pen that doesn't go away, right? And within that format, it's pretty cool.
Not like stories on other platforms. It's not
exactly.
It's not ephemeral. We're using the word stories, but that's where it begins and ends.
Yes.
Continue.
I mean, a story lives forever, right?
Yeah.
You think about like the oldest stories in the world, and people keep recreating them, retelling them. So in my opinion, this is the right use of story, but maybe I'm biased. But in the engagement and story pins, certain tries and responses. So you can actually build pins within and build this community. And it's kind of like hard to explain. So maybe we can show it of Courtney's examples. I don't know if she's gotten any good engagements yet on them since it's such a new product, but it's definitely a different format of that engagement, because it's people can visually respond to you and almost build upon your idea, and then you can get inspired back to them. And so we're pretty excited about that format. I'm excited how people are going to be able to use it and test it along the way.
It's like totally collaborative. So it's a tool that's collaborative. Courtney, have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I would love to like kind of reiterate too is can kind of become like series and chapters, whereas my problem with stories on other platforms, like specifically to speak to Snapchat, like I did it because I felt like I had to. The day other apps launched the same thing, I deleted my Snapchat and I was like, goodbye forever. This is not my app. Not my app. I hate it here because it's so instant, and I'm spending hours creating this 15-second story that dies a day later. It's stupid. So I wanted to like find a place where they could live forever. So even kind of before they were really rolling out as more of like a story pin kind of thing, I was like, how can we save these and turn them into a long form video? And like, what's the process? And so now with story pins, you can really kind of create series content. So you create something that, has like, gives people the chance to respond and become collaborative. And then based on that, you could create another form of content as a response. And then at the end of the day, you can look and have this whole like different chapters of stories and evolution of stories you can't have on another app because it lives forever here and it wouldn't somewhere else.
It's interesting that ephemeral content, I mean, just about every platform has now rolled it out, and Pinterest made the choice not to. It's sort of like, yeah, it makes sense with what Pinterest is doing and what the mission is. It's sort of this longer form, more meaningful, deeper storytelling. So I think that's super interesting. I'm interested to know other ways that Pinterest is really evolving, like as a platform to support creators. And I'd love for maybe Colleen to speak to this first, and then Courtney. But there has been this big shift across the web of sort of every platform really prioritizing creators in different ways. And I'm curious to know, like, when did that shift happen on Pinterest? Because when 10 years ago, it didn't launch as that. It launched as a place where the average person could save their inspirations and experiences, right? So what sort of, tell me a little bit about the shift that happened at Pinterest, and then the ways that you're thinking about prioritizing.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's funny. Something we say a lot is, Pinterest simply wouldn't exist without creators. I mean, all the content on Pinterest today is not from Pinterest, which is interesting because we've gotten research that pinners think it's from Pinterest. It is from creators. And it's really a lot from bloggers that want to drive traffic off of the platform to their website, which we are, not going to change, but we're building this new evolution for creators that don't want to have a website and want to build an audience and engage directly on the platform. So that's really the biggest shift for us. And there's, room and opportunity for all different types of creators, whether you do want to drive traffic off or just stay on the platform and build that engaged community. And we talked a little about this too, is this evolution is really because this is what our pinners are wanting, right? And so they want to engage with a piece of content all within Pinterest, and they don't want to click out to a different site and scroll through a different experience as well. And so that truly was why the birth of story pins was born, and why that content lives forever. It's everything is in service to our pinners and now our creators to make them successful. So we can like get into some of the tools and tactics, but that's really that evolution that we made, is to service, a new audience and really continue to fulfill what pinners really want from Pinterest.
You also said something interesting at the top of the show, which is this move from what inspires you to who inspires you. I think that's what you said, if I wrote it down properly. And I think that's so interesting because I think it speaks to the way we organize the world and the way we, the internet is so overwhelming. It always has been, but there's so much, and I think we're craving that sense of curation and a worldview of somebody that you trust to filter the world. And those curation moments that happen are so important, whether that's through a person like a creator like Courtney, or whether it's through your tools like your Today tab, which sort of tells you here's where you need to focus. I mean, I find it to be very helpful in organizing the world.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I know we haven't even talked about the Today tab yet, but that was created because, again, pinners were like, what's trending, what's new, what's different? And so that's really, that tab is driven both by search demand as well as our editorial point of view of what, we think that, based on what we know of the search, and then trying to push that trend even further.
Okay.
And that tab is really, the goal of that tab is to create a place also for creators to really shine and for us to amplify their content. And again, goes back to what the pinners want. They want to know the people behind the idea. So I think it's going to be exciting to see as our platform evolves, the more that we have, Courtney, she's in her story pins, like put yourself in it, put your face in it, but don't make it about yourself. Selfie, we say, make it about yourself. Which is really about like your expertise, your passion, like what drives you. And that's really what people want to know, right? And I loved what Courtney said when she said that it's the inner workings of her brain is on Pinterest. That only makes it even more interesting to the consumer, to the pinner, to your audience and your community. They want to know that process. They want to know like the behind the scenes and get that extra detail from you versus just like the final finished polished product.
Right. I love how on Twitter it's called working in public, and I feel like on Pinterest it's like exploring inside my brain. I do want to ask a little more about the Today tab, just because you said it's a combination of curation and what people are searching. I used to work at Instagram, and the number one question we would get, aside from "can you verify me," was how do I get on the Explore tab? So if there's any creators on here, which I'm guessing there are, they're probably wondering that, like, how do they get on there? How do they optimize for that? Is that something that, since you're curating it, can they like pitch it? Like, how does that work?
Yes. I mean, they absolutely can, which I also think is a cool thing about Pinterest. It's not as like, a wall as you would think, right? So if any of you want to be on the Today tab, I would be more than happy to, look at your content, all that good stuff. But how we work is we plan out the editorial calendar for the year based on, past search trends, data, moments in time and history, what's going on. And then we really go deep, and a full curation team finds these creators based on, these trends, what creators we know are already being successful. I'm like, Courtney, have you even been on this Today tab yet? We got to get you on if you haven't. I'm sure you have, though.
Oversight.
Yes, oversight. But it really is a thoughtful process of making sure we have, credible, authentic creators with great content that the pinners want, and then matching that with trends and data and insights.
Okay. And Courtney, do you is it something you use? Like, is it something that you look to, or is it sort of like, I don't even. Yeah.
I would say it's something that Courtney uses. It's not necessarily what Color Me Courtney uses, because again, like Color Me Courtney's like goal is to like be like, oh, that's what you want, let me do the other thing. But I think it's nice, and like a really nice like unoverwhelming tool as like a user, where I know like on other apps you like just feel like you're like mindlessly scrolling. It kind of helps like ease like some of the app related anxiety when you get on and you just get overwhelmed, or like instead of being inspired you're like almost uninspired and shut down and feel like demotivated, and it can really like mess with you. The Today tab kind of helps do the opposite of that. It's just like here's what you can like start your day with, here's what you can focus on today, and if you don't like it, it'll be something different tomorrow, and that's okay. And it just kind of takes the pressure off. So I think that's like the really exciting thing about it for me as a user.
I think that's right. I think that's very true, because it's like you do get overwhelmed on these platforms, even on Pinterest.
Yeah,
a lot of content. Courtney spoke to the way that Pinterest is thinking about like prioritizing creators. Courtney, I'd love to know from your point of view if you feel like that's true, that's the case, and do you feel like they're listening as a platform, and if so, like how is that manifested?
I actually don't feel like I've ever been non-supported by Pinterest as a creator. I would say probably of all the apps, it's like the one where I've always felt valuable. Like we know the stat that usually creators create about 90% of the content that lives on a platform,
Mm-hmm.
but we're never treated really like that in other apps. But I would say we've always been treated that way in Pinterest. Like I've always felt like if I needed a question, well, first of all, it's always been like straightforward, right? They've been like, here's the rule book. Whereas in a lot of other apps, I feel like I'm just trying to win a game and I don't know the rules. And if you do something that you don't know is against the rules, you're punished for 6 months and you're like, wait, what? And there's a lot of that happens in other apps. And I felt like Pinterest has never been that case. So it's just been less of a maze to kind of operate as an entry-level creator. Always it's been straightforward, you understand it, it's easy, you don't have to like learn all this back end stuff to like figure it out, right? And I also think the pressure is off a lot as a creator, because if you pin something that someone doesn't like, you probably pin 7 other things that people do like. And you're creating so much in the platform, there's like no rules about it, right? It's not like, oh, you can only post one thing a day the way it is on Instagram. And if you post that one thing and someone hates you, they might unfollow, and then it's like the end of that relationship. It doesn't feel that way on Pinterest. And I think it's just kind of mostly the way the app has, or the way the website has been created, to where it just is a lower pressure situation for creators. So I don't know if that was part of their strategy and like making it better for us, but it's definitely been a result.
Mm-hmm. It's a lower stakes situation where you can kind of just be yourself, which kind of speaks to one of the core. It's like not only for you, I think you said it earlier, as the creator, but for your audience as well. So it's like a two-way thing where it's like, this is an environment where you just like be and relax and be chill and not worry. And I do want to emphasize that as a key component of what I'm seeing for digital campfires that really attract young audiences. I think if you're, out here, you're a builder and you're thinking about developing platform or developing something for that audience, it's absolutely key that you have that ingredient baked in. I'm actually curious, Colleen, about some of the, what people are doing on Pinterest. I know we talked a little bit about that at the start, but I was really sort of surprised to see some of like what people are searching for, because I think I would have assumed it was cooking, recipes, crafts, fashion, but there's actually like a pretty big like social justice piece on Pinterest now, environment. Like, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, there's so much. It's been eye-opening, but also really nice, because I think it goes back to just our platform being very positive. It's, people are searching for ways to help each other. So, during this year, a lot of people weren't searching about different politics on one side or the other. They're searching for, where to vote or how to teach your kids about what's important in voting. And also as it pertains to the Black Lives Matter movement, same thing there, how to teach your kids, talk to them about, different issues, which has been really just, I think, a breath of fresh air to have these people searching for help versus searching for, a more negative impact or having a negative conversation, which happens on other platforms. So it's been, for me, inspiring in the job I have to see that people truly just want to help. They want to be educated. And I think Pinterest is the perfect platform to do that.
It's interesting, because I definitely wouldn't have thought that
right
off the top, right? Courtney, did you want to add something? Or
yeah, I would just say one of my favorite quotes is that you should always bring your full self to whatever you do, work-wise or otherwise. And I think the same applies to Pinterest. So if you're interested in these things, if you search for it once on Pinterest, Pinterest will know and will continue to kind of give you that information, and it will get to know you better, and you'll have like a better experience that way, because there's positive people on Pinterest in pretty much every bucket you could ever want, right? The community is so robust. Like you said, there's over 400 million monthly users. So there's someone who has every interest that you have. There's someone who has that on Pinterest, as long as it's in this like bubble of like positivity and like good vibes, it exists there. So because of that, you have like the wall down to really explore whatever it is in a really like nice and like easy way. But if you don't bring your full self to that platform, then you're not going to find those other people, those other connections, those other tools that do exist on the platform. So I even having this conversation with some of my cuties in my DMs the other day, a lot of people said, well, I left Pinterest years ago because I felt like it was just giving me the same thing over and over. I think on all social media platforms, it's a two-way street. You get what you give. So if you are engaging in these certain buckets, and those buckets are going to come to you, and you'll have a more rewarding experience. If you just sit back and watch, because Pinterest has put these tools like the Today tab, you'll still get new stuff. Like you'll always get things, even if you're not a participating member, but you'll have a better experience if you bring your full self to the app.
Mm-hmm. That's
I
very
love
true.
that.
That's really true. I think that goes for, that's just a great takeaway piece of advice. Because you're right, it is a relationship. And as a creator, you're building a relationship with your audience, and they're also, they have to express pieces of themselves in order to get those things back from you. Colleen, you mentioned men on the platform, dudes on the platform. I want to talk a little bit about that because I just think of like, it's a female platform. Pinterest is like where women go, but that's not the case anymore.
Yes, that is very true. So as I mentioned, Gen Z and males are the fastest growing demographics. And it's been really interesting. I would say, especially abroad. So globally, we've seen a huge uptick in the male demographic coming onto the platform. And I think the coolest thing is they've been really inspired by searching fashion. So fashion trends, and also on top of that is having them like create their own aesthetic too. I think one of the famous quotes from our CEO, Ben, said, "You know it when you see it." And I think sometimes it's hard to put what you want into words. And so what we've seen is males, Gen Zs, and all these new audiences that have been flocking to the platform, being able to kind of describe their aesthetic in a different way than they have before through visuals. So I'm honestly excited how from the content creator standpoint, how these new audiences and categories are going to start creating on the platform, and like what are they going to bring that's different that hasn't been on the platform yet today.
Yeah, I would love to know some of like the biggest rising male creators on the platform. If you not, maybe if you don't have any off the top, but just like, I can put them in a follow-up newsletter.
Yeah.
I think that's, to surface those, I think would be like really interesting. I know I follow accounts like on Instagram, like Rowing Blazers Mood Board, which are, like helping me understand the world from like a typically like dude fashion perspective. But like, I feel like Pinterest is probably going to unearth those same types of curation accounts in good time. And that's interesting that there's a lot of men reading them.
For sure.
Yeah.
I actually have one off the top of my head, the apartment bartender. He's awesome. And he
Went to my high school.
Did he? Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I had no idea.
So great.
I love that. Yeah, he's seen a lot of great success, and it's kind of the same thing Courtney does, right? You like see something and you put your own spin on it, right? So he makes amazing cocktails in his apartment. He brings his personality to it. He brings his expertise, and it's just really inspiring.
Wait, so he was around pre-pandemic? Because that's a perfect name. Like
he was around pre-pandemic, and he's blown up this year. It's like that thing where you wait for your moment, right? He's been doing it when it wasn't trendy, when no one else was doing it, and then the world changed, and now it's like, oh wait, I'm the king of this.
Right. I literally am the apartment bartender, the thing you need right now.
Exactly.
That's amazing. You guys can start putting questions in the chat. If you have any questions for Courtney or Colleen, I'll start taking them. If you want, just raise your hand and I can bring you in. But otherwise, I'll just keep asking you lots of questions because this is like a totally up my alley conversation. I guess I'm wondering what's next for Pinterest. How is the platform thinking about evolving to accommodate kind of the changing needs of the audience, which, let's face it, are changing so quickly. Like everything that happened in the last 6 months is a huge sea change. So how are you thinking about like getting ready and anticipating some of those changes that we're sure to see?
Yes, I know. I can't share too much yet, but we have a ton of new stuff coming out in 2021, and it's truly still the year of the creator for us, and focusing and helping creators like Courtney, like others, just be more successful and tap into our insights and our trends. So story pins are only going to get better and better. Our engagements and the way you can engage with your community is going to get better. Analytics are going to get better. So I'm really excited. We're going to have some good announcements in April and May of next year, and probably do a fun campaign. So stay tuned for that. But really just truly focusing on the creator and making it a better community for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of pays dividends, right? In all different ways for attracting audiences. Sorry, Courtney, were you going to say something?
Oh, I just saw Dr. Lauren asked a really great question in the chat, and I was going to answer it because I just we just were talking about this lately, and Colleen can tell me if she thinks I'm wrong. But they asked, can you create content on Pinterest that doesn't lead to a blog post? So I would say yes, for sure. Please do. And I think Pinterest really loves that. They love to see that in their creators. And that's probably a way to get your content more featured and more prioritized from a creator POV. The best way probably as an entry level point would be to do story pins, because they have a different time length that doesn't exist on other platforms. Like if you think of Reels / TikTok as that like 15-second to 1 minute video, and then think of YouTube as like much longer, like 10-minute, 20-minute videos. There's this like kind of in between that's not quite short form video content, but it's just a little bit longer that can live really well on Pinterest. That I don't think that market is really tapped by other apps and social media. So it's a really great opportunity. And then also I would say, speaking to the series content that I said before, like I've seen so many great series that happen usually on TikTok, and it's so annoying to find them as a user, because I want to find like the first one and I want to see the whole progression. It's really awful to find. So I think you can create that, and that lives on Pinterest so well, and you can see the whole series, and it's very beautiful and aesthetically easy. So I think those two would be really great content that you could create specifically for Pinterest.
That's a great question. We have one from Tracy. Courtney, how do you feel about pinning your Instagram photos?
I pin everything I put on Instagram. Everything I put anywhere else. Like I said, Pinterest is like my one catch-all. So yes, create things specifically for Pinterest. Also use it to pimp yourself out for everything else that you're doing elsewhere. It all, like if it fits like the Pinterest like checks and balances of something that can live on the app and be successful, I put it on the app, and it grows my Instagram.
Okay, wow, it does, because you're linking back. Okay.
Yep. People see it and they go, oh, and then they find out who I am through Pinterest, because it's like this curated thing. It's much easier to find a small creator on Pinterest than it would be any other app. You have more opportunities to be successful and find specifically your tailored audience. It's like, truthfully, from a creator, it's like a dream, because if someone is color obsessed and their feed is colorful and full of things, I'm in their feed. And they find me, and then we can connect. So if you have like a specific niche and you find it hard to grow on like big bad Instagram or like on TikTok or anywhere else because it's so overwhelming, and your niche maybe isn't like the winning trending niche, you can find those like-minded people on Pinterest, and they'll find you and they'll follow you and support you in everything you do, not just on Pinterest.
I mean, we know the power of oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I said you can find the most loyal followers on Pinterest.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think it's so interesting, very important what you said, and I just want to call it out, because the power of niche is certainly important across all parts of the internet, right? In terms of building a following and finding your like hardcore niche. But what you're saying is there's something really special about Pinterest in terms of helping bringing those really deep niches rise to the top, bubbling up to the surface. Yeah, in a way that, you know, may not be as
Oh, I was gonna say, it's like built-in target marketing. Right. It like does the hard work for you, and you can find exactly who you're looking for there.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point, important to know. We have a question from Genevieve. So I work at the Dodo, and we're a video first, everyone knows the Dodo. We're a video first platform. Do you have any recommendations for leveraging video content on Pinterest? Courtney, I know you do this a lot, but either one of you can jump in to answer.
I would just say Courtney can go first, and then I can do that.
The user, I gravitate more towards videos on Pinterest. Again, like I learned maybe this summer as I started experimenting with TikTok, especially because I had a smaller following there, I was like, why aren't I pinning these? If they're like, if they're ugly dance videos, I'm not going to put them on Pinterest. But if they're beautiful, like changing outfits of like, I did a faux fur rainbow thing where I did all my like coats in a rainbow to a Beyonce song. And it didn't do that well on TikTok. I put it on Pinterest. People loved it because people were looking for a faux fur, or they were looking for rainbow, or maybe they were just looking for Beyonce. Whatever they were looking for, they found them through that video. So for the Dodo, I would say if you can restructure your videos a little bit, I found the most success if you're going to repurpose content to tailor it to Pinterest. So find a way to make it work for Pinterest. And I'd probably have to see a specific video to tell you, but whereas on TikTok, it was, hey, here's me dancing to a Beyonce song, and yes, my clothes are changing. On Pinterest, the story was, here's how to wear faux fur rainbow, because that's maybe what people are looking for. It's a little bit more intentional and less of kind of I don't want to say that my video was garbage content, but my video on TikTok was very much like kind of filler, like, sure, that was entertaining, and then I'll swipe past and I'll never think about it again.
Mm-hmm.
But wanting to have impact on Pinterest, and I think that's where the content on Pinterest is successful, is if it can have long-term impact, if you can revisit it a year from now and still be proud of it, instead of just kind of posting out like garbage the way you would maybe post out on somewhere else. So if you can find a way to repurpose any of your videos to make them like longer and more intentional and things that you'll be proud of a year from now, opposed to things that you maybe just like throw up for like a fun moment.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. We have a question from Ashley, and it's about tips from getting started on Pinterest as a creator. If I join the app, what are some quick tips you recommend creators prioritize to start leveraging the platform? Now, before even answering that, because it's a great question, I just want to say, like, the number one way to do this is just spend time on the platform and start to get a sense of what's working, what's not, what do you respond to as a user. And that goes for any digital campfire platform. And that also applies not only to creators, but to marketers. Like, if you're a brand trying to reach people and you're like, I want to be on Pinterest, go spend time and hang out and see and interact. So that would be my number one piece of advice. But I would love sort of those tactical tips, like, okay, yes, what do we need to do? Do we need to subscribe to some newsletter to find out like all the latest and greatest? How do we get in touch with you? Like, all the things.
All the things. I love it. Okay, well, I'm going to link our like main creators page in here so you guys can check it out. And that can really, you can go deep there for hours and a ton of links and resources and all that good stuff. But first thing is create a business account. The business account will enable you to, eventually get verified and also get access to story pins, when we have that. And so what I would say is business account's the easiest way. And then really just getting your profile in good shape, like have an amazing picture, get a bio, think about your brand name. And also curation is really important as well. So thinking through like what's your aesthetic and boards there. But the easiest thing you can do is go to the site, comb through it, start a business account, and just play around and start creating.
Great.
Courtney, I wonder if you had anything to add.
So I would echo what you said about being a user first. 100%. It's so obvious when someone isn't a user and they're trying to create on it. Like, be a user. Maybe carve out time. Like, if I'm going to spend an hour a day working on my Pinterest, spend 30 minutes being a Courtney and then 30 minutes being Color Me Courtney, and kind of get both sides of the experience, because that will make you a better creator. And of course, business account, all those things. I would say lean into the things that you see Pinterest is prioritizing. Story pins, things like that. Lean into those and make sure you're creating into those, because the app has been around for so long. There's a lot of things that maybe used to be trendy or used to be what people were doing on Pinterest that still exists, but follow kind of what Pinterest is like leading the way for and going that way. I would say find 5 benchmark accounts. So maybe they're people that you follow on other platforms that you're like, let's see what they're doing on Pinterest. Or maybe they're just other accounts that you find like through exploring Pinterest, and watch what they're doing. And either watch what they're doing and completely do the opposite, or watch what they're doing and like find takeaways. Like, oh, I love that they do this community board. I want to do that. I love that they're creating this series content. I want to do that. And find different things that you can do and then make them work for you. Like we've kind of talked about, bringing your complete and full self. And I would say the the Pinterest creators tools, or like their website, is so great on a bunch of different apps. So I follow them on Instagram, and even then when I'm like forgetting to think about Pinterest, like right at that moment, or if you're new to creating on Pinterest, maybe it's not part of your like working routine yet, following them on other apps kind of helps keep them top of mind. So I'll be working on something else for Instagram, and they'll pop up in my feed, and I'll be like, oh, great, that reminds me, I need to go back and do some work on Pinterest. So having that top of mind, even in your other aspects of your career, I think is really, really helpful.
Okay, you also need to teach a Pinterest masterclass. Like, I don't know if you have like a side hustle doing courses, because like honestly, I just learned so much.
I mean, she really should just work for Pinterest at this point.
Such a good, like, what's the tactical takeaway? And I think that's so helpful, because people are like, want to understand and digest that information. So thank you. We are a little bit past the hour. I just want to give you guys the opportunity, if you need to hop off, Courtney and Colleen, I don't want to make you feel pressure to stay. I'm going to stay for 10, 15 minutes. And for anyone who wants to, and we can keep answering questions, but if you need to jump off, I will give you that opportunity as well.
Yeah, I know. I say, unfortunately, I have to jump off, but this has been amazing. Thank you all so much. And hopefully these resources are helpful. And Sarah, if you send a follow-up, I'm happy to provide anything else and help people get started and be successful.
Absolutely.
Colleen, you're the best.
Thank you, Courtney. It's so good to see you all.
So great to see you. I'm happy to stay for like 10 minutes if you'd like.
Oh, fantastic. That's wonderful. So I will keep taking questions from you.
Bye, Colleen.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Awesome. I'm so glad you can stay. So Kayla asked a question. Courtney, can you share how you use Pinterest as a component of your full business model? You really did speak to that. So I don't know if you want to go into too much detail, but was there anything you maybe didn't share from what you said? I love what you said about offering chapters on every platform. Maybe you could elaborate on that a bit.
For sure. So for me specifically, if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I have Color Me Courtney, which is like my full self, I would say. And then I have Color Me Magic, which is like this kind of like nerdy community of about 100,000 that I didn't think would turn into what it's turned into. So, and between the two, I do a lot of series content. Like I'm just OCD and I like it organized and in chapters. It makes me happy. So that's how I produce my content. So on Color Me Courtney, color of the month, like January, this is like a sneak peek. The color is going to be yellow. So everything I'm going to be doing is going to be about yellow there. And then I do theme weeks on Color Me Magic. So, you know, Harry Potter is a theme week. Like Disney Princesses might be a theme week. So between that, I have a lot of themes that I'm creating into, right? And so my strategy for Pinterest is it's the one place where you can get all of me. Like you can get Disney Princesses, you can get Color Yellow, you can get like Color Me Classroom is another series I do on Color Me Courtney where I do tips every Tuesday on like building your brand and like Instagram and social media or whatever. All of that can live on Pinterest. So the thing that I'm working on right now, so don't look at it yet because it's not ready, is I'm making sure that each one of those Pinterest boards is really robust and it shows everything I've done into whatever I'm speaking to. So everything I've ever posted about how to grow your Instagram, whether it's Instagram story, whether it's a new story pin that I created specifically for Pinterest, whether it's me rambling like a 5-minute excerpt from a live, that can live on my Color Me Classroom board. And the same with my Harry Potter board and the same with my yellow board. So as I step into these weeks, so maybe I have yellow as the color of the month for January, but I've been wearing yellow for 5 years. So there's one place, Color Me Courtney, Pinterest/yellow, where you can find everything I've ever done in that. And I'm also then maybe repinning other cuties wearing yellow. I'm also pinning pictures of Beyonce in yellow, like whatever to give you that yellow mood board. I create a playlist for each color that can live there. And it becomes like this one-stop shop for that specific niche. So whereas with Color Me Courtney, you really want to you probably have to like me to follow Color Me Courtney. But if you can't stand me, but you love the color yellow, you could still enjoy the yellow Pinterest board.
Yeah, you've really thought so thoughtfully about your niche and then how to express that. It's like if you had to, I just sort of picture it as like a big flow chart and you've like mapped it out on a whiteboard and your brain has come to life in this Pinterest. Like it's very strategic and I think it's to be commended. So it's really cool to hear because honestly, you could swap color for whatever your content pillars are, whatever it is you do. Like the dodo someone was here from, like that's totally doable. Yeah. All right, more questions. I actually think that's it for, if people want to keep asking, we'll please continue. And also, if you want to use the raise hand feature in Zoom, I can bring you into the chat as well to like ask your question live, if that's something you want to do. Oh, here we go. Oh no, I have Ashley Chapman. She was clapping. I took it for.
Oh no! Oh, that was my hand raised because I couldn't find
it was a good thing. Okay, so you want to turn your video on, Ashley?
Okay, yeah. Let me see if I can do it because I'm on my mobile device.
Oh, no worries. It's
okay. Hi, everybody. Hi. So, quick question. So, really great. Thank you for giving me that advice. I have a Pinterest. I think like most people, creators do, but I haven't really dived too deep into it, and I was using it a lot personal use. So it's great to hear that, as creators, we can sort of use it to help leverage our businesses and our communities for greater impact. So the majority of my community is on YouTube. I create a lot of really fun at-home dance-inspired workouts for my community. And so when I was on Pinterest, I was always trying to figure out how to merge the two, or how to, I guess, use Pinterest in a way where I could, make that work or make that make sense for the type of content that I create. So obviously I will be following other, fitness influencers or, other people who are in that niche on the platform, but just spitballing, like, what would you suggest, for people who maybe their audience is on a longer form, video platform, or, they're kind of more creating those fun style pieces of content that you see on TikTok or on Instagram? Like, how can you start to fuse that? Because I think for me, the disconnect is, I know Pinterest can be a one-stop shop, but I just haven't figured out how to bring those different pieces together from different platforms.
So you're at a huge advantage, I would say, to be having the longer form and trying to figure out ways to scale it back for Pinterest. That's more of an advantage than someone who is only doing photos, because they have to kind of step their game up to be successful on Pinterest at the moment. I'm not a workout pro at all, but I was so inspired by what you're just saying. Like, I had so many initial ideas. So I would say the number one would be every video that you have, going and taking a screenshot of those moves. So if it's like 10 moves like this and this and this, obviously I'm very great at working out, taking a screenshot of those and putting it into a long form photo, like as long as you can. A lot of times you see really long things on Pinterest that will take up a whole page. Those are great, because when there's 78 things over here, you're like just owning a page on this side. So making it a really long one of like, 5 steps to better abs or whatever, 3-minute leg workout, all those like kind of like really clickbait things that people are going to want to click on. For you, you have to get busy now, because I'm sure, as you know, next month is your Halloween, right? That's when people are going to be coming to you more than ever. Like at-home workouts, lean into those trends and find ways to create your content. And I would say every piece of content you have right now on YouTube, you could probably make it into 3 different pieces of content on Pinterest. So if you have one long form video that has 10 different like workout tips in it, that could be one, your long thing of like, here are 10 workouts. Your next one could be maybe like a shorter clip of like, this is what I do when I'm stressed. I get up and I do this 1 5-minute workout, or like, just like one quick move over and over, almost like in like a boomerang thing. That's your second piece of teaser content. And then maybe your third one is, here's what I'm wearing in this video, and here's how you can shop it. So you can kind of really lean into creating boards that way. I would create a board for every specific like kind of zone. So abs, arms, at-home workouts, all of those can be boards, and your same content can live on multiple boards. So if you're doing an arm at-home workout, it can live in arms and it can live in at-home. I would also then be pinning other things like workout playlists. Like every month you can create a new workout playlist for people to use. And I think your niche can be so successful on Pinterest, and there's so many opportunities. I don't live in your niche at all, so that's just what I would do from like my branding brain. But like you said, I would hop on and see what other people successful in your niche are doing.
Oh my God, you just dropped so much knowledge.
Thank you so much.
My favorite thing is when people are like, this is what I want to do, and it's something I don't want to do at all. I'm like, this is how you do it. This. Take it.
No, I love it. And it's so I love a good like tactical rundown. So thank you. We will take one last question. I see Ryan asked, have you found paid to be necessary or helpful? That's paid media. So putting money behind these, some of your content.
No, I'm probably not the Pinterest answer, because they probably want you to do that. I've never done it. Actually, I did it once and it was okay. Like, I think usually you have to do it like a lot of times to really get like a long-term response. Same with Instagram. I don't really do it ever unless a brand wants to put money behind, like, if Starbucks is paying me to create this photo, then Starbucks will put money behind it, and I'm not really involved in it. I just kind of watch it pitched out. But it's never really been of interest to me. And I think because I am so mega niche, and I think a lot of the people here might be mega niche too, I've always just wanted to find people like the organic way. So I've never really invested in paid media.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's someone who could speak to it about how to use it for like a product or something like that. I'm sure it's really valuable in that aspect, but I've just found in like selling myself as something for people to follow, when it happens organically, it happens and it stays forever. If they follow me because they feel like they have to, it's just like kind of already like it's like being set up on a blind date versus meeting organically, you know?
That is
It's like,
such a good analogy.
you really have to like overcome like the weirdness. So
Oh my gosh, now every time I encounter an Instagram ad or an ad on any other platform, you'd be like, is this like a bad blind date? I feel like some platforms match you very well though, where I'm just like, ooh, this is a thing.
sometimes your friend knows you better than you know yourself, right? So, you know, it's not a bad thing. It's just you have to overcome that hump of like, oh, I want to be here versus like, I have to be here.
Totally. Well, I am going to wrap things up now. Courtney, thank you so much for being here. Like, I just learned so much. I learned so much in researching this interview and looking at your following and how you've built it. Thank you a million times. I'm so grateful, and all the people here who joined today. So really just thank you so much for being here. Anyone who joined and signed up, you will get the recap in a week or two and sort of what are the key takeaways that Courtney spoke to. And if you ever want to come back and do follow-ups, I'm all ears because this has been fascinating for me. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining. I'll put a little question box up in my Instagram, on my Instagram story. So if you guys have continued questions, happy to chat with you there.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I'm so happy to see everyone and all the chat blowing up. So I really appreciate your time. All right. Awesome. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Bye.